four friends drove toward the mountains to outrun a tragedy. They checked into a hotel in Manali, a town defined by its heavy tourist crowds and the typical energy of a mountain getaway. A few months earlier, Sahil, one of the four friends, received a phone call from his brother's school trip. His younger brother had been killed instantly after being struck by a vehicle. Before the accident, Sahil was the life of every prodi. Now he sat in the back seat of the car in complete silence, staring blankly out the window while his friends tried desperately to reach him. Human trauma leaves a physical mark on the brain, but it also creates an absolute emotional vacuum. When someone loses a core piece of their identity, the mind scrambles to fill that sudden silence, leaving its internal defenses completely exposed. To break Sahil out of his silence, the group decided to drive up to Rohtang Pass. It is a high-altitude, winding route on the eastern Pir Panjal range of the Himalayas, known for narrow roads and sharp mountain curves. As they grabbed their keys, the hotel receptionist stopped them with a strict, urgent instruction. They needed to be back inside the hotel and behind closed doors before 6 p.m. The receptionist explained that Rohtang literally translates to Valley of Death. For centuries, locals have locked themselves away at sunset, fearing a shape-shifting entity rumored to hunt travelers caught in the pass after dark. The four men laughed off the warning. They dismissed the story as a local superstition, prioritizing their goal of cheering up their grieving friend over ancient folklore. They drove up the mountain, unaware of the specific danger they were courting. When modern skepticism enters an ancient, unforgiving environment, a mind already hollowed out by grief becomes a visible, defenseless target. Night fell quickly on the mountain, bringing with it a dense, blinding fog. Visibility plummeted to zero, forcing Arun to crawl the car forward at an agonizingly slow 30 kilometers per hour. Through the fog, the headlights caught a stone milestone on the edge of a cliff. It read, Manali 28KM. Sitting directly on top of the freezing stone was a strange man wearing only a thin white dhoti, a traditional Indian garment of unstitched cloth wrapped around the waist. This map shows their intended linear path along the mountain highway. The group drove in silence for another 20 minutes. Then the headlights illuminated the exact same stone, Manali 28KM. Only the rest of the car didn't see the man in the dhoti. Chirag saw a little girl holding a toy. Arun claimed he saw a massive black horse watching them pass. The road they were driving on was now an inescapable circle. They all turned to look at Sahil in the back seat. He wasn't afraid. He was leaning forward, whispering over and over again that someone out there needed their help, and they had to stop the car. The mountain road had stopped functioning as a shared physical space. The pass was fracturing their perception, presenting a different version of the nightmare to each passenger, until it located the one specific trauma that would allow it inside. On the third loop, a figure stepped out of the fog. It was a 15-year-old boy, casually walking and effortlessly keeping pace with a vehicle moving at 40 kilometers per hour. The boy's appearance was precise. His clothes were stained with mud, and his face was covered in fresh, violent bruises, the exact type of injuries sustained by someone struck by a heavy vehicle. Sahil stared through the glass, his breath hitching. To him, this wasn't a ghost on a mountain road. It was the brother he had failed to save. He reached for the door controls and rolled down the window to let him in. Panic erupted in the front seat. Arun slammed his finger on the central locking system, desperately trying to seal the windows, but the mechanical buttons failed to respond. The car finally pulled away, leaving the boy behind. But as Sahil looked in the rearview mirror, he saw the boy standing in the road, waving, and in the reflection, Sahil was smiling warmly and waving back. A genuine supernatural breach doesn't require forced entry or shattered glass. It only needs an invitation from a victim, born out of the desperation to feel whole again. The fog finally broke. They found a milestone reading Manali 16 kilometers, and eventually reached their hotel at 2 a.m., exhausted and convinced they had outrun the nightmare on the mountain. At 3:30 a.m., Sahil woke to a strange noise. In the shadows of the bathroom, Sahil was staring into the mirror, his own hands gripped tightly around his neck, cutting off his air. His eyes were bloodshot and bulging, but his face held a massive, terrifying grin. As he choked himself, he softly sang a familiar tune. It was a gentle lullaby, the same song he used to sing to put his little brother to sleep. Sahil stopped singing, looked at them with a perfectly innocent, childlike expression, and asked if they would open the window for him next time. Then he collapsed unconscious on the floor. Speeding away from the mountain pass had accomplished nothing. Escaping a physical location offers no safety once an entity has bypassed a person's logic and successfully anchored itself directly inside their mind. The next morning, they took Sahil to a local pundit, a scholar skilled in ancient rituals. The man took one look at Sahil's eyes and immediately began an intense exorcism. The ritual triggered a violent physical purge. Sahil convulsed on the ground, ultimately vomiting a thick, unnatural black liquid onto the floor. This diagram illustrates the pundit's explanation. The entity had scanned Sahil's mind, found the exact shape of his dead brother, and morphed itself as a parasite shape to perfectly fit into that trauma. The local villagers locking their doors before dusk weren't acting out of irrational fear. The Valley of Death legends are a precise historical record of a predatory environment, passed down as a survival guide. We tend to fear physical threats in the dark. But the most dangerous predators don't care about our bodies. They hunt the open, bleeding wounds of our grief, and they perfectly mimic the people we miss the most.